My name is Ophelia Kingsley, and I'm 29 years old. People love to say that blood is thicker than water, as if sharing DNA automatically makes someone safe, loyal, or kind. Whoever came up with that clearly never met my siblings. The first time I realized I was the outsider in my own family wasn't at some big, dramatic moment. It happened quietly, through a screen. I learned about my brother's wedding from Instagram. At the time, I told myself it was a misunderstanding, a glitch. Maybe an invitation had gotten lost. Maybe there'd been some mix up with addresses. I wrote my own heartbreak off as paranoia because the alternative, that my brother had chosen a world where I didn't exist, felt too painful to accept. Then my sister got married. And once again, I found out from photos everyone else was already liking and commenting on. After that, it was a lot harder to pretend. 3 years later, I was sitting at my kitchen table, drowning in wedding magazines of my own, when my phone buzzed against my shoulder. I swear if you're still debating whether to invite them, I'm driving over there and physically hiding your stamps, my best friend Chloe said dryly. Her voice crackled from the tiny speaker as I tried to balance my phone between my ear and my shoulder. I'm not debating, I muttered, flipping a page harder than necessary. I'm weighing the social fallout. That's a fancy way of saying you're still thinking about being the bigger person, she shot back. You've already been the bigger person, Ophelia. For years. How's that working out for you? My kitchen table was covered in glossy pages. White dresses, flower arches, smiling couples who probably hadn't been blocked out of their siblings' lives like a smudge in Photoshop. I pushed one magazine away and stared at the venue brochure that lay open in front of me. The Ashford Estate. Stone terraces, rose gardens, a ballroom that looked like every princess movie I'd loved as a girl. Liam and I had signed the contract last week after months of budgeting and spreadsheets and quiet arguments over whether we could really afford it. We decided we could, or maybe we decided we deserved to try. I know you're right, I sighed. Mom keeps saying it'll look bad if I don't invite them, that people will talk. People are already talking, Chloe snapped. They talked when your own siblings forgot to invite you to their weddings. They talked when you were mysteriously missing from all the family photos. The difference now is that, for once, you'd be the one setting the boundary. I twisted the engagement ring on my finger, a habit I'd developed the day Liam slipped it on. Yellow gold, oval diamond, nothing huge or flashy, but it fit my hand and my life perfectly. Did I tell you Brandon texted me last week? I asked quietly. What? After 4 months of ghosting you? Chloe's tone sharpened. What did he say? Just that he heard I got engaged, that he wants to reconnect. I let the words hang there, bitter on my tongue. No apology, no mention of his wedding, just like we'd had a minor disagreement and now it was time to move on. Chloe snorted. The timing is suspicious. How did he even find out? Mom, probably, I said. She still thinks we're one conversation away from becoming a Hallmark movie. My chest tightened the way it always did when I thought about my mother's voice on the phone, bright and eager when she talked about Brandon and Victoria, vague and impatient when she talked about me. I was there for both their weddings, Chloe, I whispered, staring at the Ashford photo until the edges blurred. Not in person, obviously, but on my phone, in my apartment, alone, liking photos that felt like proof of my own erasure. Tell me I'm not crazy for being hurt. Crazy? Chloe's voice rose. Ophelia, they got married at Riverside Manor with 300 guests and said it was a small ceremony. Your sister had your cousin Amanda as a bridesmaid, a cousin you introduced her to, and somehow there was no room for you? Your brother had his college roommate's buddy in his wedding party, but not his own sister? No, absolutely not. You're not crazy. She trailed off, presumably searching for a word printable on a wedding invitation. They're selfish. Footsteps padded across the tile. I looked up. Liam walked into the kitchen carrying 2 mugs, his dark hair still damp from the shower, sleeves of his t-shirt shoved up his forearms. He took in the chaos of papers and my pinched expression with one quick glance. Wedding talk? He asked, setting a mug down in front of me. Wedding drama, I corrected, giving him a wan smile as I accepted the coffee. Chloe is trying to stop me from making life choices I'll regret. Well, she's good at that, he said easily, leaning down to kiss the top of my head. Tell her I said hi. She heard you, Chloe replied loudly, and she says you're stuck with me as maid of honor until death do us part. Liam chuckled. Honestly, that was part of the deal when I proposed. For a moment, everything felt almost normal, like I was just another bride worrying about centerpieces instead of restraining orders and invisible scars. Then the doorbell rang. Liam frowned. Expecting anyone? No, I said, a prickling unease crawling up my spine. My family had trained me well. Good news rarely came unannounced. I'll get it, Liam murmured, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before he left the kitchen. Chloe was still talking, but her words faded into background noise as my mind raced through possibilities. A package? A neighbor? Mom, showing up in person after months of emotional drive-by voicemails? The murmur of voices reached me, muffled but tense. Liam's tone shifted from polite to wary. Ophelia, he called after a moment. You have visitors? The way he said visitors made my heart drop into my stomach. I have to call you back, I told Chloe, already standing. Something's come up. Text me if I need to grab my baseball bat, she said, half joking, half not. I forced my legs to move, every step toward the hallway feeling like wading through mud. I rounded the corner and froze. Standing in my living room, looking completely out of place against our thrifted furniture and gallery wall of travel prints, were my brother and sister. Brandon, Victoria. Surprise, Victoria trilled, her voice pitched a little too high. She stepped forward with open arms, the kind of hug reflex she'd perfected for social media. Congratulations, little sis. I didn't move. Up close, I could see the effort behind her smile, the tension at the corners of her mouth. Brandon held a bottle of champagne like a peace offering, his own grin a stiff, rehearsed thing. We heard the big news and couldn't wait to congratulate you in person, he said. It's not every day my little sister gets engaged. My little sister. The phrase used to make me feel warm, wanted. Now it just felt false. I glanced at Liam. His jaw was tight, his stance subtly protective. How thoughtful, I said finally, my voice colder than I intended, especially considering I wasn't worth inviting to either of your weddings. For a second, no one spoke. It was like I'd cracked a glass table with a single tap and we were all watching the fracture lines spread. The smiles slipped off their faces almost in unison. Victoria recovered first. She always did. Her expression softened into a look I knew too well. The practiced concern that had fooled teachers, bosses, and our mother for decades. Oh, Ophelia, she sighed, placing a hand over her heart. You're not still upset about that, are you? We explained it was a small ceremony, and 300 guests isn't small, Victoria, I cut in, the word sharper than I'd planned. I saw the photos, all those second cousins, your husband's golf buddies, college friends I've never even met, but somehow your sister didn't make the list. Brandon stepped forward, his jaw clenching. Look, that was unfortunate timing, he said. You were going through that rough patch with your job, and we thought... You thought what? I interrupted, feeling my pulse in my throat. That I'd embarrass you? That I wasn't worth including? That the girl who worked herself to exhaustion to help pay Dad's medical bills might ruin your aesthetic? That's not fair, Victoria protested. Her tone shifted, wounded, as if I had slapped her instead of spoken. We've always supported you. Liam cleared his throat. I think I'll give you three some privacy. No, I said quickly, reaching out to grab his wrist. Stay. I want you here. I needed him there like an anchor. Without him, I wasn't sure I'd trust my own version of reality over theirs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Half out of habit, half out of desperation for any distraction, I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A new text from Chloe. Chloe, just talked to Sarah. B and V only showed up after they heard your venue is the Ashford estate. They want in. The words blurred for a second, then snapped into razor focus. And just like that, all the scattered pieces slid into place. Brandon's sudden interest, Victoria's overdone warmth, the champagne, the timing. They hadn't come because they were happy for me. They'd come because they wanted a ticket to my wedding. To my venue. I lifted my gaze slowly, feeling something inside me harden into clarity. Interesting timing, I said, my voice calm in a way that felt dangerous, even to me. I held up my phone. Sarah just told Chloe why you're really here. The Ashford estate photographs beautifully on social media, doesn't it? Brandon's expression flickered, the friendly facade cracking. That's ridiculous, he snapped. We're here because you're family. Family, I repeated, tasting the word. Where was this family when I was watching your weddings through my phone like a stranger? There it was again, that flash of annoyance beneath his polished exterior, that subtle calculation in Victoria's eyes. They weren't here to fix what they'd broken. They were here to make sure they didn't look bad. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Victoria blinked. What? I have a wedding to plan, I continued, my hands shaking but my voice steady. And for once, I'm going to plan it around people who actually want me in the room. Ophelia, be serious, Brandon said, a thread of anger creeping in. You're not really going to exclude your own brother and sister from your wedding. I met his gaze and, for the first time in my life, didn't look away. You already taught me what that feels like, I replied. I'm just returning the favor. The silence that followed was thick and electric. I heard Liam exhale slowly beside me. Something shifted in the air then, something fragile and enormous. For 29 years, I'd been the one bending, smoothing, swallowing, making excuses. The bigger person, the peacemaker, the one who turned myself into a smaller shape to fit into their version of family. But not this time. Liam will walk you out, I said softly. I'm done pretending this didn't happen. As they left, their stiff backs and stiff smiles falling apart at the edges, a cold, unfamiliar feeling settled in my chest. It wasn't triumph. It was mourning. I hadn't lost my siblings that afternoon in my living room. I'd just finally admitted to myself that I'd lost them years ago. And somewhere deep down, beneath the grief and fear of what would come next, a quieter thought formed. If they were willing to manipulate me to get into my wedding, what would they do when I told them no? If my siblings' surprise visit had been a slap, the next 48 hours felt like the sting afterward. Hot, throbbing, impossible to ignore. I didn't sleep much that first night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victoria's carefully arranged expression of hurt, Brandon's tightening jaw, the champagne bottle gleaming in his hand like a bribe. In the morning, my phone was full of missed calls from Mom and a handful of increasingly passive-aggressive texts. Mom, I heard what happened yesterday. Mom, your brother and sister are devastated. Mom, is this really how you want to start your married life? With grudges? I turned my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling until Liam rolled over and pulled me against his chest. You okay? He murmured. No, I admitted into his t-shirt, but I think I'm done pretending I am. 2 days later, I sat in a white leather chair in Olivia Sterling's downtown office, a latte sweating on the glass table in front of me. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, and swatches of fabric and sample bouquets were artfully arranged like part of a showroom. This is insane, Olivia said, pushing her designer glasses up her nose. They just showed up after ghosting you for their own weddings? Apparently the concept of irony is dead, Chloe muttered, scrolling on her phone beside me. Liam sat on my other side, long legs stretched out, a contract folder open on his knee, but his attention was fixed on me. The audacity is almost impressive, I admitted, wrapping both hands around my latte as if it could steady me. Mom called afterwards, sobbing, saying I'd attacked them when they were just trying to make amends. Classic rewrite of events, Chloe said. They light the fire, then complain about the smoke. Olivia tapped her pen against her leather planner. Okay, question from your very invested wedding planner, who low-key wants to throw hands for you, she said. Do you have actual proof they deliberately excluded you? Something more than vibes and Instagram clues? A familiar sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Proof. Receipts. Evidence. I do, I said quietly, unfortunately. Chloe looked up. Show her the email, she said, and the texts. Liam nodded. You'll feel better having someone neutral see it all laid out, he added, his voice gentle. I pulled out my phone, fingers suddenly clumsy. For a moment, I hesitated. There was something so final about dragging screenshots into the daylight, like I was making accusations I couldn't take back. Then I remembered Brandon's hand on my wrist. Victoria's bright, brittle voice at my front door, my mother's voicemail painting me as the villain. I opened my photos and tapped on a familiar screenshot. This, I said, handing my phone to Olivia, is the email that got forwarded to me months after Brandon's wedding. The subject line stared back at me. Wedding logistics. Please don't mention to Ophelia. Olivia read slowly at first, then her eyes began to move faster. Her eyebrows climbed. It would just be awkward having her there with everything that's happened, she read aloud. Let's keep the details quiet around her. Last thing we need is drama on the big day. She skimmed a few more lines, then looked up. And what exactly had happened? Nothing, I said flatly. The word hung there, heavy. Well, Chloe interjected, unless you count Ophelia getting promoted instead of Derek, the golden boy who happens to be Brandon's best friend. Olivia blinked. I'm sorry, what? We both worked at the same marketing firm back then, I explained. There was a promotion on the table. I got it. Derek didn't. I worked nights, weekends, took every awful project no one else wanted. But in Brandon's head, it meant I must have played politics to climb over a man. Olivia exhaled slowly. Wow. And Victoria? She asked. Chloe smirked without humor. Ophelia dated Kyle's brother briefly in college, she said. He made the mistake of comparing them once, not in Victoria's favor. She's never forgiven Ophelia for that. I swallowed. I still remembered that drunken conversation in a dorm kitchen, the way the words had slipped out, the way they'd somehow gotten back to my sister. Of course, none of that is my siblings' official version, I said. If you ask them, it was all about budget and guest limits and timing. Olivia handed my phone back with a look that had shifted from professional curiosity to something closer to protective anger. Okay, she said. For the record, the Ashford estate has a capacity of, 250? 200, Liam corrected absently. And your siblings had 400 combined? Olivia continued. They had room. They just didn't want you there. Exactly, Chloe said. But now they've discovered she booked the Ashford, and suddenly they've found religion. My phone buzzed again. The familiar ache in my chest flared as I saw the caller ID, Mom. I let it go to voicemail. When the little red notification appeared, I hit play and set the phone on speaker. Ophelia, you need to call me back right now, my mother's voice snapped through the room. Your brother and sister are devastated. Brandon says you humiliated them and threatened to ban them from your wedding. Is that the kind of person you want to be after everything they've done for you? Family forgives, Ophelia. It's time to stop this nonsense before you ruin our name. I flinched, even though I'd heard variations of that tone my whole life. I stopped the message halfway through, thumb shaking. Everything they've done for me, I repeated hollowly. Like, what, exactly? No one answered. Liam reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, steady. She didn't ask what they did to you, he said quietly. Just what they supposedly did for you. The distinction sliced through me. This is going to keep escalating, Olivia said carefully. And I know this is blunt, but I have to ask, what's your plan? Because if they're willing to ambush you at home, they might try something at the venue. I've seen families do wild things to make a point. Every muscle in my body tensed. I pictured Brandon marching into the reception, Victoria sobbing in the middle of the ceremony, my mother cornering guests to whisper her version of the truth. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. I'm tired of being the one who backs down. Then maybe don't talk to someone who expects you to back down, Chloe said. Talk to someone who actually sees them clearly. Like who? I asked. Your Aunt Catherine, she replied instantly. She's the only one in your family who's ever called them out. The suggestion settled over me like a lifeline. Catherine, my father's sister, the woman who'd slipped me $20 bills in high school with a wink and said, for escape snacks, when family dinners got too loud. The only adult who'd ever looked at my siblings and said, nope, that's not okay, out loud. Within an hour, Liam was driving us across town to Maplewood, the older suburb where Catherine lived. The air smelled like rain and cut grass as we walked up the front steps of her little brick house. Her kitchen was exactly as I remembered it, warm light, crowded fridge magnets, the faint scent of coffee grounds and cinnamon. I've been waiting for this conversation for years, Catherine said without preamble, as she poured steaming coffee into mismatched mugs. Sit, all of you. All? She wore her usual uniform, dark jeans, a soft cardigan, silver hair pulled back in a low bun. Her eyes, though, were sharp as ever. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic and, for the first time in a long time, felt a little less alone. So, she said, leaning on the counter, tell me everything. Start with the part where they turned up uninvited, because that already has my blood pressure up, I told her. Liam and Chloe filled in details when my voice shook or I glossed over something. The champagne, the fake smiles, the way Victoria's tone shifted the second I challenged her, the Ashford estate reveal, my mother's voicemail. By the time I finished, Catherine's expression had darkened from irritation to something close to fury. Your siblings have always competed with you, she said finally, ever since grade school. But excluding you from their weddings? That crossed a line I didn't think even they would cross. Mom says I'm overreacting, I whispered. That I should forgive, that I'm destroying the family over hurt feelings. Catherine snorted so loudly Liam almost choked on his coffee. Your mother has been enabling their worst behavior for decades because it's easier than facing it, she said bluntly. She doesn't want to see that the children she spoiled turned into adults who hurt people, so she pretends you're the problem instead. The words landed with brutal accuracy. She's not wrong about one thing, I murmured. I am about to destroy something, just not in the way she thinks. Catherine came around the counter and pulled out the chair across from me, folding her hands. Listen to me, Ophelia, she said. You have spent your entire life being the bigger person, apologizing first, swallowing things that should have had consequences. If you keep doing that, you will teach them one thing, that they can do anything to you and you will still show up smiling. Tears burned the backs of my eyes. I blinked them away. So what do? I asked. Ban them from my wedding and become the villain in their story forever? You already are the villain in their story, Catherine said gently. That's the role they put you in the moment you stopped being convenient. The question isn't whether you'll be the villain to them. It's whether you're going to keep being the victim to yourself. Silence settled over the table. What do you want, Ophelia? She asked, her tone suddenly softer. Not what your mother wants. Not what keeps the peace. Not what makes the extended family comfortable. You, what do you want? No one had ever asked me that about family before. I stared down into my coffee, watching the surface tremble. I want... My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. I want a wedding day where I feel completely loved and supported, where I'm not watching my siblings perform for Instagram while pretending I'm not even there. I want consequences. I want them to finally feel something even close to what they made me feel. Catherine nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting to hear that. Then that's what you'll have, she said. You are allowed to curate your guest list like you curate your life. Being related to you by blood is not a golden ticket to your happiness. Liam squeezed my knee under the table. What about Mom? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She'll be furious. She might not come. Catherine met my gaze head on. Then she doesn't come, she said. If her ticket to your life depends on your siblings' comfort, that's her decision, not yours. You don't owe anyone access to the most important day of your life if they can't even respect you. The idea felt radical, dangerous, free. Besides, she added, the edge returning to her tone, I have a feeling this won't end with them pouting at home. People like Brandon and Victoria don't accept no easily. They may escalate. If they do, you'll need to be prepared to protect yourself legally if necessary. A chill ran through me at the word legally. Images flashed in my mind. Courtrooms, restraining orders, our family name whispered in hallways. I don't want to drag my own siblings into court, I whispered. You may not have a choice if they keep pushing, Catherine replied. But here's what you do have a choice about, whether you walk into your wedding day braced for impact or surrounded by people who would stand between you and any storm. I sat there, heartbeat pounding in my ears, realizing that somewhere between their wedding invitations that never came and my Ashford contract, the ground had shifted. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. Okay, I said finally, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. I don't want them there. I don't want them at my wedding. Liam's grip on my knee tightened for a second, then relaxed. When I looked at him, his eyes were shining. Then they won't be, he said simply. Chloe grinned, fierce and proud. I'll guard the guest list like my life depends on it, she vowed. Anyone named Brandon or Victoria who tries to get in will be meeting my heel. Catherine smiled, but there was steel behind it. Then we plan, she said. Because if I know your siblings, and I do, they're not going to take this lying down. I didn't know it yet, but she was right. Saying no to them in my living room had shifted the ground. Saying no to them at my wedding would start an earthquake. I should have known Brandon wouldn't let things go. People like my brother don't hear no the way normal people do. To them, no is a challenge, an insult, a personal attack that must be corrected, punished, or controlled. So when my mother called me the next morning, voice sharp, rehearsed, and trembling with indignation, I wasn't surprised. What did you do to your brother? She demanded. Brandon says you were cold, hostile, even cruel. He's devastated. He wants to fix things, Ophelia. He wants to meet you for lunch today at Giovanni's. Please don't make this worse. A year ago, I would have folded instantly. One stern word from Mom, and I'd spiral into guilt, convinced I was ruining the family. But something inside me had changed. I'll meet him, I said quietly. Not for him, for clarity, for myself. When I told Liam, he insisted on driving me. Ophelia, he grabbed your wrist last time, he reminded me. I'm not letting you walk into this alone. I won't be alone, I said, touching his cheek. You'll be nearby. He parked across the street from Giovanni's, an upscale Italian restaurant with glass doors and gleaming marble tables. The kind of place my siblings loved. Performative elegance, curated lighting, and inflated prices designed to impress people who valued optics over sincerity. You text me the second something feels off, he said, thumb brushing my knuckles. I will. Inside, Brandon was already seated near a window, wearing a suit he definitely didn't need for a weekday lunch. His tie was slightly crooked, a nervous tell he'd had since childhood. He stood when he saw me, arms opening in an awkward attempt at warmth. Ophelia. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm glad you came. I sat without hugging him. A flicker of irritation crossed his face, quickly smoothed over. So, he said, clearing his throat, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There it was, the script, the opening act of Brandon Hayes, revisionist historian. A misunderstanding, I echoed. Is that what we're calling years of exclusion now? He winced like I'd slapped him. Then, deep sigh, martyr pose, fully engaged. Okay, I can tell you're emotional, so let's slow down. Emotional. The oldest trick in the gaslighting handbook. My fingers tightened around my water glass. What happened at your wedding? I asked calmly. Let's start with that. Brandon rubbed at his temple. You were going through a rough time professionally. Derek didn't take the promotion well, and we didn't want tension. I cut him off. Don't rewrite this. I earned that promotion. Derek didn't. You and your friends took it personally. It was awkward, Brandon snapped, the mask slipping. Having you there would have created drama. We were just trying to avoid... Drama? My voice stayed soft, almost gentle. You mean the drama of acknowledging your sister existed? He exhaled sharply. And Victoria's wedding? I pressed. He shrugged. Guest list issues. 300 guests isn't a list, Brandon, I said. It's a census. His jaw tightened. You're making this into something bigger than it was, he muttered. Mistakes were made on both sides. Really? I asked. What exactly did I do wrong? Well, he paused, searching the air as if an excuse might materialize. You've always been difficult. I laughed, not kindly. There it is. When you run out of lies, you go straight for character assassination. His voice hardened. You were Dad's favorite. And you hated that, I said softly. Not because Dad favored me, but because he didn't worship you. Brandon flinched. You always made everything about yourself, he hissed. Even now, this wedding of yours, you booked the Ashford estate just to show off. So that's what this is really about, I whispered. Not forgiveness, not family. You just want access to the Ashford. For the first time, the truth cracked straight across his face. You're impossible, he spat. This is why nobody invites you anywhere. Somewhere deep inside me, something finally stopped bleeding. Then let's not pretend, I said. You excluded me. You lied. You manipulated. And now you're angry because I'm drawing a boundary. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You're not excluding me from your wedding, he said quietly. You don't get to make us look bad. If you go through with this, we'll make sure the whole family knows exactly what kind of vindictive witch you really are. And then, he grabbed my wrist. Hard. Not enough to bruise, but enough to pin me in place. Conversation froze around us. A couple at the next table turned. My pulse hammered against his grip. Let go of me, I said, steady and cold. He squeezed harder. You're not ruining our reputation, he said through clenched teeth. I won't let you. I lifted my phone with my free hand. I started recording the moment you raised your voice, I said quietly, letting him see the glowing red icon. You just added physical intimidation to the list. His face drained of color. You can't record me without consent, he snapped. In this state, I smiled without smiling. Single-party consent. At that moment, a shadow fell across the table. Is there a problem here? Liam's voice. Brandon jerked back like he'd been caught stealing. We were just having a family discussion, he stammered. Sounded like more than discussion, Liam said, placing himself between us. Sounded like threats. Brandon puffed up, trying to salvage control. This is absurd. I came here to make peace. No, I said, standing. You came here to manipulate me, and when that didn't work, you resorted to intimidation. Brandon's face twisted with contempt. You always were Dad's little spy, he snapped. Always watching, always judging. You like tearing the family apart, don't you? I didn't tear anything, I said. I just stopped pretending. I turned, but he barked after me. If you think you're going to exclude us and just walk away, think again. I stopped, my spine stiffening. You're threatening her? Liam asked sharply. Brandon blanched. No, I didn't. I have it on recording, I said softly, lifting my phone again. Every word. Silence. Cold, heavy, irreversible. I'm done, I said, stepping away from the table. If you come near me again, I will take this to court. Brandon sat there, furious and powerless, the facade gone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. As Liam and I walked out of Giovanni's into the bright afternoon light, I felt my heartbeat start to steady. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Liam said quietly. I know. And I'll be right here. I nodded, but something icy slid down my spine. Because that night, barely an hour after I got home, the texts started. Not one, not two, dozens. From Brandon, from Victoria. Accusations, guilt trips, threats disguised as concern, and some not disguised at all. My phone buzzed until long after midnight. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, pulse racing. Catherine's warning echoed in my mind. They won't accept no, and if they escalate, you'll need to protect yourself. By dawn, as my phone buzzed again with another barrage of messages, I finally understood something. This wasn't sibling conflict anymore. It was harassment, and it wasn't going to stop on its own. By morning, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls, venomous texts, and messages from unknown numbers that absolutely, unmistakably belonged to my siblings using burner apps. At first, I tried to ignore them, but harassment has a way of bleeding into your bloodstream. Even silence becomes loud. By the third day, after I found Victoria waiting outside my workplace building, screaming about being erased from the family, drawing the attention of horrified coworkers, I realized something terrifying. My siblings weren't just angry. They were escalating. And escalation meant danger. It was Liam who finally said the words out loud. "We need a lawyer." I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, phone face down on the coffee table like a live explosive. My heart was still pounding from the confrontation in my office lobby. Victoria's mascara-streaked face, security pulling her away, her shrill voice echoing off the marble walls. "You think you're better than us? You think you can keep us out of your wedding? We made you. You'll regret this, Ophelia." Regret, threats, manipulation, and a mother who still insisted I apologize. I looked at Liam, his brow creased with worry. "I don't want this to become a legal thing," I whispered. He took my hands and squeezed them gently. "It already is a legal thing," he said. "They're harassing you. They're showing up at your work. They're threatening you. Ophelia, this is past sibling drama. This is dangerous." Dangerous. A word my brain did not want to absorb, because if I admitted things were dangerous, then the people who shared my blood were people I needed protection from. But my wrists still ached faintly from Brandon's grip. My coworkers had seen Victoria screaming like she was auditioning for a tragedy, and the texts were getting darker. "You're ruining this family. Don't push us. You can't ban your own blood from your wedding. People will take our side. If you make us look bad, we'll make sure people know the truth." Truth, of course, meant whatever version of events they could weaponize. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I whispered. "We call a lawyer." Diana Chen greeted us in her office with a firm handshake, immaculate blazer, and an expression that said she'd seen every kind of family disaster imaginable and would not be fazed by mine. "Tell me everything," she said, clicking her pen. I did. Brandon grabbing my wrist, Victoria's scene at my job, the threatening texts, the emotional manipulation, the ambush at my house, the voicemail from my mother blaming me for escalating things. By the end, Diana's jaw was tight. "This is harassment," she stated. "Clear, escalating, and targeted. The physical contact at the restaurant is important, so is the volume of threatening messages." Liam leaned forward. "Is a restraining order possible?" "Not only possible," she said, "but recommended." I exhaled shakily, as if someone had punctured a balloon of denial I'd been holding inside me. Diana continued, "Your wedding is in 2 weeks. Given the escalation, the court will consider the urgency." "Court," I repeated softly, the word foreign in my mouth. "Against my own siblings." Diana looked at me with a calm, compassionate firmness. "They have made themselves a threat. Family is not a shield against accountability." Her words landed with the weight of truth I had avoided for too long. A week later, I sat in a cold courtroom, hands clasped in my lap so tightly they ached. "All rise," the bailiff announced. "The Honorable Judge Martinez presiding." Judge Martinez was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, posture straight, expression unreadable. She looked like someone who had zero patience for theatrics, and my siblings were nothing if not theatrical. Diana presented our evidence, the recording from Giovanni's, screenshots of texts, emails, Victoria's workplace outburst, corroborated by written statements from coworkers, Chloe's eyewitness testimony, Liam's account, even the doorman's note about Brandon attempting to drop by our building late one night. Brandon and Victoria sat across the aisle with their own lawyer, alternating between anger and performative hurt. Victoria dabbed at her eyes constantly, though they suspiciously never watered. Brandon kept shaking his head at the judge like he was the victim. When Brandon spoke, he used words like miscommunication, misunderstanding, and spiraling emotions to paint himself as noble and wounded. When Victoria spoke, she made herself sound like a heartbroken sister, barred from her beloved sibling's life, a modern-day martyr of familial injustice. Judge Martinez was unmoved. Not one muscle in her face twitched. If this behavior continues, Diana said as she wrapped up her argument, my client will be forced to consider further legal action. But for now, all she asked is for safety, privacy, and peace during her upcoming wedding. I kept my eyes on the judge the entire time. She finally leaned forward. I'm granting temporary restraining orders against both Brandon and Victoria Hayes, she said crisply. Effective immediately, they are to remain at least 500 feet from Ms. Kingsley, her residence, her workplace, and her wedding venue for 30 days. Relief punched through me so sharply my eyes stung. Victoria gasped dramatically. Brandon muttered something under his breath. Their lawyer put his face in his hands. But it wasn't over. As we stepped into the hallway afterward, Victoria rushed toward me, ignoring her lawyer calling her name. Ophelia, please, she cried, now producing real tears, whether from emotion or humiliation, I couldn't tell. Don't do this. We're family. We made mistakes, I know, but you shutting us out like this, can't we fix it? Please let us come to your wedding. I'm begging you. Once upon a time, those words might have cracked me open. But not now. You shut me out first, I said quietly, repeatedly, deliberately. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry for the consequences. Brandon stepped in next, his face blotchy with anger. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You made your point. Drop this and maybe we can salvage the situation. The restraining order stays, I said. You threatened me. Both of you. I'm not pretending that didn't happen. So that's it? Brandon demanded. We're not family anymore? His voice echoed in the hallway. I looked at him, really looked at him. His resentment, his entitlement, the way he believed blood gave him rights over me, the lack of remorse in his eyes. We stopped being family, I said, the day you decided I wasn't good enough to be in yours. A stillness settled between us. Irreversible. Cold. Final. I turned away. The restraining order papers in my hand felt heavier than I expected, but not in a bad way. They felt like armor, and for the first time in years, I felt like someone worth protecting. The morning of my wedding felt unreal, like waking up inside a dream I had once been afraid to imagine. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the bridal suite at the Ashford estate, casting warm gold over chiffon dresses, crystal hairpins, and the soft bustle of women who loved me. Not just by blood, but by choice, by action, by loyalty. Chloe was fixing my veil with the precision of a surgeon and the intensity of a bodyguard. If one hair is out of place, she muttered, I will bulldoze every stylist in this building. Chloe, I laughed, voice cracking with a mixture of nerves and joy. You don't have to threaten the staff. Oh, I do, she said, eyes narrowed. You deserve perfection today, and I will not tolerate any chaos, especially not Hayes-level chaos. Aunt Catherine chuckled from the sofa as she dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Let her fuss, she said warmly. She's been waiting for this wedding almost as long as you have. I took a breath and stared at my reflection. My dress was elegant. Off-shoulder satin with a fitted bodice and a skirt that shimmered softly when I moved. My makeup was subtle, the kind that made me look like I was glowing from within, even though my insides felt like a kaleidoscope of emotions. Today was supposed to be about joy, but grief has a way of whispering in the corners, even on the happiest days. Dad wasn't here. Mom had chosen not to come. My siblings were legally barred. It was the right choice, but right didn't always mean easy. A knock came at the door. Catherine opened it, and her face lit up. Your father's here. I turned, and there he was. Dad stood in the doorway, wearing a slate gray suit and an expression so full of emotion it nearly undid me. Hi, sweetheart, he said softly. The lump in my throat became a boulder. He stepped inside and froze when he saw me in my dress. Oh, he breathed. Ophelia, you look like your mother did on our wedding day. Tears blurred my vision. He didn't mean it as a wound, just a memory, but it still stung. Mom should have been here, holding my hand, pinning my veil, fussing over lipstick smudges. Instead, she had sent a cold, formal email listing the ways I'd humiliated the family. The absence of her love dragged at my chest. Dad crossed the room and kissed my forehead. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. I'm proud of the woman you've become, and I'm honored to walk you down that aisle. I nodded, unable to speak. Chloe squeezed my hand behind my back, grounding me. A little later, Liam knocked softly and stepped into the room, breaking tradition, but we'd never cared about tradition unless it meant something to us. He froze when he saw me. Wow, he breathed. Ophelia, you're breathtaking. His voice trembled just enough to make my heart swell. He handed me a small ivory envelope. These came for you, he said gently. Security screened them. I opened it. Inside were two cards, one from Stephanie, Brandon's wife, and one from Kyle, Victoria's husband. Both apologized for not standing up for me sooner. Both wished me joy. Both hoped my day would be filled with love. Genuine, simple, no manipulation. It warmed something inside me I didn't realize had gone cold. "You okay?" Liam asked, brushing a thumb along my cheek. "I am," I said truthfully. "For the first time, I really am." He kissed my forehead and left before the guests could see me. Minutes later, the music began. I walked to the top of the staircase that led down to the ceremony terrace, clutching Dad's arm. Below, I could see it all. The white floral arch, the rows of guests in soft sage and champagne tones, the glimmering fountain behind the aisle, the sunlight catching the crystal vases. And at the end of the aisle, Liam. His eyes locked onto mine the moment I appeared. Not a single trace of doubt. Not one flicker of hesitation. Just absolute unwavering love. "Ready?" Dad asked. I smiled. "Absolutely." We walked. Each step felt like shedding a weight. Years of dismissal, exclusion, loneliness, and trying to earn a place I'd never been given. When I reached Liam, Dad placed my hand in his and whispered, "Take good care of her." Liam nodded. "Always." The ceremony unfolded like a warm breeze. Soft, beautiful, real. When we exchanged vows, Liam's voice shook. "I choose you," he whispered. "Every day. No conditions, no expectations, just love." I felt my heart expand. We kissed. The guests erupted into applause. And for the first time in years, I felt fully seen, fully chosen, fully loved. The reception was a whirl of laughter, clinking glasses, music, and dancing. Aunt Catherine gave a toast that made half the room cry. Chloe roasted me affectionately, calling me a woman who finally stopped accepting crumbs from people she used to call family. I was laughing through tears when Catherine tapped my shoulder. "There's something you should see," she said, holding up her phone. My stomach lurched, but I followed her to a quiet corner. She opened Facebook. My mother's profile photo filled the screen. My pulse stuttered. Mom had posted something, publicly. It wasn't a guilt trip, it wasn't a lecture, it wasn't a passive-aggressive remark. It was a full, raw confession. Watching Ophelia's wedding livestream today broke something open in me. I realize now I enabled the wrong behaviors in my children for far too long. Ophelia gave Brandon and Victoria chance after chance, and they threw them away. I'm proud of the strong woman she has become. Congratulations, Ophelia and Liam. My breath caught. I stared at the screen, barely able to comprehend it. This wasn't the woman who scolded me for ruining the family. This wasn't the woman who had always protected my siblings at my expense. This was a mother who understood, at least a little. "Livestream?" I whispered. Catherine smiled. Chloe thought she should see what she was missing. I turned across the ballroom. Chloe was dancing with one of Liam's groomsmen, but when she saw me looking, she winked. A bubble of laughter broke out of me, half disbelieving, half emotional. Liam found me moments later, sliding an arm around my waist. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," I whispered. "Everything is better than it's ever been." He kissed the side of my head. "Then let's go dance." And we did, under chandeliers, surrounded by people who loved us, with no ghosts from my past trying to tear the moment away. For the first time in my life, I felt entirely light, entirely free. Let the people who chose to exclude me watch from afar. Today, I wasn't missing anything. They were. 3 weeks after the wedding, life had begun to settle into its new shape. Boxes lined the walls of our new home, a small, sunlit place with hardwood floors and windows that let in the scent of blooming jacarandas. Liam was at work, and I was unpacking kitchen items while humming our first dance song under my breath. For the first time in years, my life felt quiet, safe. But peace has a way of making past wounds louder by contrast, and there were still fractures left by my mother. A knock came at the door. Gentle, uncertain. I froze, a mug halfway to the cupboard. Another knock, soft, but somehow heavy. I checked the peephole. My breath caught. It was my mother. I opened the door slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence. The woman who once swept through rooms dictating every emotional temperature now stood with hunched shoulders and tired eyes. "Hi, Mom," I said quietly. "Ophelia," her voice wavered. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered slowly, as if afraid the house might reject her the way she had rejected me. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a gulf of history between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Her voice cracked on the word thinking. I folded my hands into my lap. "Okay." "I talked to your father," she continued, "to Catherine, to Stephanie and Kyle, even to some of the family group chats. She sighed, a long, weary exhale that seemed to drain something out of her. And I saw the wedding stream. My heartbeat stuttered. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. You were so happy, she whispered, so loved, surrounded by people who would walk through fire for you. And I wasn't even there. I inhaled shakily. That was your choice, Mom. I know. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. And it was the wrong one. She took out her phone and scrolled. Then she handed it to me. A group chat with extended family filled the screen. Message after message criticized Brandon and Victoria for their behavior. People expressed shade, shock, disappointment, anger. Some messages went further. I always wondered why Ophelia wasn't at the weddings. This is appalling. They excluded her and expected nothing in return. One message from a distant aunt read, Ophelia's wedding showed what real family looks like. Maybe we were blind before. I felt something ache inside me, a fragile mixture of validation and sorrow. Mom continued, voice trembling. When people saw how beautiful your wedding was, how loved you were, they started asking questions. Then they heard about the restraining orders. I tensed. Mom shook her head quickly. No, I'm not here to accuse you. Just listen. She swallowed hard. Victoria lost 3 major real estate clients, she said quietly. Apparently, word spread about everything. And Brandon's firm is strongly reconsidering him for partner. Their reputations are suffering. I closed my eyes for a moment. I never wanted to ruin their lives, I whispered. You didn't, Mom said, firm for once. They did this to themselves. You simply stopped being their shield. The words hit something deep, something old. All those years, she whispered, voice breaking. I told myself you were strong enough to handle things on your own, that you didn't need me to defend you. I poured so much energy into soothing Brandon's ego and protecting Victoria's image that I left you to fend for yourself. A tear slid down her cheek. It wasn't that I didn't love you, she said. It was that I believed you didn't need my love as much as they did. And I was wrong. God, Ophelia, I was wrong. My eyes blurred, the room tilting. Hearing her say the thing I'd spent years silently begging her to see, it cracked me open. Why now? I whispered. Why come here and say this now? She looked straight at me, unflinching, in a way I had rarely seen from her. Because Brandon and Victoria asked me to choose sides, she said. They said if I wanted a relationship with them, I had to cut you off until you apologized. A cold shiver ran through me. And I realized, she continued, that they weren't asking me to choose between my children. They were asking me to choose between enabling toxicity and choosing what was right. Her voice trembled. For the first time, I chose you. A sob escaped me. Quiet, brittle, unexpected. She reached out but stopped, giving me the choice. I took her hand. It was warm, familiar, missing for too long. She whispered, I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I just want the chance to show you I can be better than I've been. We talked for 2 hours. About the siblings she can no longer defend. About her realization that love is not measured by protecting the loudest child. About my father telling her she'd wake up one day and realize which of her children truly needed her and which simply demanded her attention. When she stood to leave, she hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, Ophelia, she whispered into my hair. More than I ever said, more than you ever knew. My chest flooded with warmth and grief and something like hope. And whenever you're ready, she added softly, your father and I would love to have you and Liam over for dinner. Just the 4 of us. I nodded. Maybe next month. Whenever you're ready, she repeated. When she left, the house felt different, warmer somehow. I called Liam first, then Catherine, then Chloe. All 3 cried for different reasons. And for the first time in my life, I felt a door open instead of close. A door to healing, not performing. A door to being seen. That evening, as Liam and I unpacked the last of the kitchen boxes, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. This is Stephanie. I'm filing for divorce from Brandon. I thought you should know. And I'm prepared to testify if you need to extend the restraining order. You deserve better from all of us. I stared at the screen. Liam peered over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. Wow, he murmured. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. Do you think I'm a bad person? I asked softly. For not feeling worse about all of this? For feeling relieved? Liam wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. You're not responsible for the consequences of other people's actions, he said against my hair. Your siblings made their choices, so did your mom, so did Stephanie, and you. You finally chose yourself. He kissed my temple. That's not cruelty, he whispered. That's survival. And as I leaned back into him, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the quiet of a home finally free of chaos, I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. 3 months after the wedding, Liam and I were standing on the cliffs of Santorini, the sunset spilling molten gold across the water. The sky looked like it had been painted in warm strokes: peach, lavender, rose. The breeze tasted like salt and new beginnings. Liam had hired a photographer as a surprise. We laughed as the wind tangled my hair, as he wrapped an arm around my waist, as the photographer captured the exact moment our foreheads touched and everything else faded away. It was the kind of picture that didn't just look beautiful, it felt like peace. Later that night, lying together on the balcony of our hotel, I posted the photo on social media. The caption was simple, not poetic, not dramatic, just true. Life is too short to spend it with people who don't see your worth. Choose yourself, always. Within minutes, it had dozens of likes. Within an hour, hundreds. But the comments were what stunned me. Strangers wrote about cutting off toxic relatives. Friends confided things I never knew. Coworkers admitted my story, gave them courage to set boundaries. Distant family members apologized for not noticing, not asking, not stepping in sooner. The most unexpected comment of all came from my mother. "So proud of the woman you've become. Love you, sweetheart." My throat tightened as I read it. Not because everything was suddenly perfect. It wasn't. Healing was slow, uneven, and still ongoing. But this time, my mother was choosing honesty instead of denial, choosing me instead of comfort, choosing change instead of excuses. A few days after we returned home, another message came from Stephanie, Brandon's now estranged wife. This time, a photo attachment. It was a picture of a moving truck in front of the house she once shared with him. "I left," she wrote. "I'm rebuilding my life. Thank you for being the first person who ever made me question what real family should look like." I stared at her message for a long time. Not in triumph, not in vindication, but in recognition. Sometimes one person standing up for themselves doesn't just change their own life. It shakes the ground enough for others to see their path out too. As fall settled in, my life grew beautifully, quietly ordinary. Liam and I made Sunday pancakes. We argued playfully over throw pillows. We adopted a rescue dog with mismatched ears and named him Oliver. We had dinner with my parents, just the four of us. Awkward at first, then gentle, then warm. Mom apologized again. Not perfectly, not easily, but genuinely. She started therapy. She began calling to ask how I felt instead of telling me how I should feel. We weren't healed, but we were healing, and sometimes that's enough. One evening, as I was organizing my new home office, I found the binder with old wedding plans, names crossed out, guest lists redacted, scribbled notes of people I'd once begged to show up for me. I sat down, feeling the weight of everything that binder used to mean. All the years I tried to earn approval, all the times I silenced myself to keep peace, all the pain I'd minimized because it came from family. I didn't cry, not anymore. Instead, I closed the binder and placed it gently in the bottom drawer. Not to hide it, but to honor it. Every page was a step that led me to who I am now. A woman who knows her worth. A woman who sets boundaries without apologizing. A woman who understands that family is not defined by blood, but by behavior. A woman who stopped letting people hurt her just because they shared her last name. A week later, I got a message from a young woman who followed me on social media. "I watched your wedding live stream. I cut off my brother after he stole my car. Your story gave me the courage to walk away. Thank you." I held my phone to my chest, overwhelmed, because I finally understood something. My story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making anyone regret hurting me. It wasn't even about the restraining orders or the fallout or the wedding they watched from a distance. It was about this one truth. Loving yourself is not selfish. Choosing yourself is not cruel. And walking away from people who refuse to love you well is not a failure. It's freedom. As I curled up beside Liam that night, Oliver snoring at our feet, Liam kissed my temple. "You look peaceful," he murmured. "I am," I said softly. "Finally." And I meant it. For the first time in my life, the story of my family wasn't one of survival. It was one of reclaiming myself, choosing myself, and never, ever accepting less than I deserved again.